And now we are very, very excited to welcome the IDEO team back with a couple of new faces, including Reed and Paris, who are all incredible people who have been exploring Web3 communities in many different forms. And really excited to introduce them to you, the KB4 Fellows, and I've given them some background on who's in the room. They know it's an incredible group of people. That out of the way, we're excited to just explore these ideas together and get to know each other. So I'll pass the mic to Reuben, I believe, who has some slides to kick us off, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Vivek, GM, everyone. Excited to be back for Block 4. Really stoked to be with you all and see just the quality and energy of everyone in this room and in Block 4. We'll start with a few quick intros, but we'll go through this stuff pretty quickly. So this block, or this guild, Web3 Communities Guild, has a lot of different facets to it. As Vivek mentioned, we started with this as the fair launch track. We've talked about things like token communities as well. This time we're talking about Web3 communities, all different evolutions of some of the same concepts, with the underlying theme being ownership and participation is the key feature of Web3, and that unlocks so many things. And we're going to explore a lot of these things together over the next few weeks. So this is part of our team, Joe, myself, and Paris. We also have Reed here as well. He didn't quite, didn't quite make the cut for this slide. Sorry, Reed. We'll have to add you.
That's my fault.
All good, all good. All right, so we'll do a quick warm up and go through some of the objectives. But basically, we're going to talk a little about Web3 community principles. It's going to be a very collaborative session. We want to hear what you all, I think we want to hear what comes to mind when you hear Web3 and communities. There will be a chance to talk about some of the projects you're working on. I don't think we will actually break out in this session. That slide's a bit old, so we might just stay together for this session and see who wants to share. Although Vivek, if you want to do some breakouts, we could do that as well.
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Okay. Oh, the warm-up challenge. We should have warned you all. Okay, so for the virtual warm-up, we love this exercise because you get to draw an interpretation of your logo. You might actually be very good at drawing. You might be able to draw a great logo. I am terrible. So our logo, when I draw it, looks nothing like it. I think this is something that Joe drew. It's pretty good. So anyway, grab a pen and paper. Or if you don't have one handy, maybe open up, I don't know, Paint or Preview or something like that. And let's take 5 minutes to draw and then share the logos of the project you're working on, or of the project you're working with, or really anything that you want to share with us today. So yes. Let's do it.
Yes, and we'll put these in the Guild Web3 Communities channel. And emphasis on that last point. If you don't have a logo yet, maybe this is B1 of something that's on your mind.
All right, maybe another minute or so.
Solid kernel logo, Ben.
Oh, strong, Vivek. There we go. Thanks for leading the charge. What else we got here?
Reality
thank you,
TV
Ben.
show. Try before you vibe.
Awesome.
People
All
drop
right.
in the Slack.
Ooh, yeah.
Mike.
It's in the Web3 communities channel. I'll make sure you're in there, Joe.
What happened?
Check that out, Michael. That's great. That's a real. I'm impressed that you drew that in the last 3 minutes, Michael. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't. I cheated.
We'll allow it.
The truth comes out, Michael. The truth comes out. It looks good though. I like
Thanks. I'm one of those
Sure.
founders who's like really not qualified to draw logos, but spends hours and hours and hours fooling with his own logo until like someone who's a professional comes and fixes it.
Faradilla, that looks awesome. Jordy, thank you. These are great.
Logo in 30 seconds, good stuff.
Reuben, you might want to. Oh, we can't do that actually. I was going to say, can we screen share the Slack and show some of these?
Oh, I could probably do that.
Go for it.
Kevin, we're posting into the Guild Web3 channel in Slack.
Let's see.
I like that Oakland tree.
Jordy, you're allowed to draw. We won't tell. I'm not officially allowed to draw according to the team. That's fine. There it is.
Awesome.
The paint version of Cambridge. Gotta love that. That's awesome, Sumida. And this one is, oh yeah, Al Govera. This is a really cool one. I hope you guys get to meet the IDEO folks. There's so many cool projects here that.
Wow, look at them all. Epic.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. A player's art for everyone on the call, not just the IDEO folks. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. That's all I have to say about that. It is mind-blowing.
Very cool. Well, yeah, thanks, Vivek. Thanks, everyone, for being part of this fun little game. Keep dropping them in if you haven't. Put them in that Web3 communities, the Guild Web3 communities channel. And yeah, thank you all. D-School,
Cool.
awesome. All right, let me just jump back onto our slides here. Cool. All right, let's talk a little more about today's objective. So really, we just wanted to introduce our new guild, welcome you all to join us on this journey. Yeah, I think when we started doing these sessions for Kernel Block 2, as Vivek mentioned, we were thinking more about concepts of a fair launch. And that concept itself has evolved. It's grown into a lot of different aspects of community building, but it does form some of the foundations of what we think about as some of the Web3 principles. So why community ownership? As I mentioned a couple of times, we believe that community ownership is the most powerful feature of Web3, and it's what differentiates Web3 from the previous iterations of the internet that have come before it. And it is the biggest opportunity that we all have. When we have a fair distribution of community ownership, of influence, of collaboration, we create the conditions for a healthy and sustainable network. And so if we think about all the different ways that we are changing the organizations of the future, we're creating new structures for collaboration on the internet and beyond. If we simply mirror the structures that have been created before us, we are not going to affect any real change. So at the same time as we have this amazing blank canvas, we can draw from some of the lessons of organizations and cultures that have come before, but at the same time, we can break a lot of boundaries. So we thought about this a lot in the context of DeFi and token distribution, but it also forms the basis for communities and all kinds of groups on the internet. And finally, having that diverse set of contributors can build a more useful, resilient network as well. So having said that, this slide has been updated a few times over time, and the idea of a fair launch, I think, is still evolving. None of these are intended to be perfect examples, just a few different aspects. So Bitcoin, of course, the first cryptocurrency that started everything. The launch was, it was fair in some senses. We can talk a lot more about that. The objective of this session is not to debate any technicalities around this, but just to give you some examples. So Bitcoin was available to anyone who knew about it, who could start mining. Some other examples, an interesting one, YFI, a similar concept for the Yearn ecosystem. Uniswap. Now this is interesting because there were insiders, there were tokens distributed to investors, but there were tokens given away to all users. So the Uniswap airdrop was a great example of giving ownership to community and sharing ownership of the protocol that way. I put in Loot as well as just an example of some of the new distribution mechanisms for NFTs, which all have a variety of different levels of participation from the community. In the same way that Bitcoin was available to anyone who wanted to mine it, Loot was available to anyone who knew about it and wanted to mint it. Is that completely fair? That's a great question. So there's some aspects of these things that maybe aren't as open or as inclusive as they could be, but again, this is evolving. On this slide, does anyone have any other examples of distribution of ownership of projects that have done things that they like? Just unmute and speak up.
So I think an interesting one is Friends with Benefits, where they're a DAO and you have to buy certain tokens. But once you're in, that integration gets you a whole set of events and organizations, collaborations that I think is also an interesting model.
Yeah, it's a great example of community ownership of that the DAO. Yeah.
I don't have one in particular, but I'd like to point out that what I'm seeing happening recently in some of these launch token systems, where they announce that they're going to launch a token and you can go and buy in pre-sale or at the moment of sale. I think that creates some kind of fair distribution. I've seen quite a few of them happening, both on Ethereum and on Binance Smart Chain. I haven't followed them very closely, but I have seen the result of a lot of people saying, well, I want to participate. And if they do their due diligence and they find out how it will work, it seems to be fair, more fair than having a closed group distribute the tokens.
Thanks, Ernesto. Thanks, Juliet. Anyone else?
Fan of Kong Cash. They're doing this like a cloud country. They've distributed these kind of like founding. I mean, anyone could get in as a founding member of this DAO, but also just for citizens to come in and build and export their chip technology that they're producing, and then the profit, like the value of these chips, are kind of centralized in this cloud country DAO, which is, I think, is a super fascinating idea of this like fair launch for a hardware technology and getting it distributed to making more physical things crypto. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, the chat has a bunch of them. PoApp, Mirror with an interesting example of Bright Race, DAO House, Klima DAO, Wiren is, I think, on the slide. Christian just put Element Finance in there. Lots of cool links.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, so these examples are things that we can draw on. You know, we are on this journey, learning from a lot of the folks that have launched things before us and some of the successes and failures of their launches. So we just highlight all these to kind of bring this top of mind, because as we go on this journey and design the distribution mechanisms for the communities and groups that we build online, really having a thoughtful process to your own launch is going to be critical. So just kind of park some of these ideas. Keep thinking about the distribution. Distribution is just one aspect of having a great Web3 community, but it is a pretty critical one because you really only get one shot at it. And so it's very important to be thoughtful about launching a token. Cool. What else do we want to talk about? Oh yeah, we do have Miro as an example. There you go. So crowdfunding via NFTs as well. I think since we did this this program for Block 3, a lot's changed, especially in the NFT world. We're seeing a lot of 10K avatar PFP drops as the foundations for building a community, and similar aspects of the distribution problem. They apply to NFTs as well as fungible tokens or any other way to galvanize a community. So I think you can think of NFTs or ERC20 tokens, DAOs, frameworks, all these as tools. These are tools to recognize and formalize the membership and ownership of your community. But ultimately, it comes down to the people that you want involved and how you want to incentivize them. So think of these things as tools and tools that can achieve a specific result. So you need to think about the result you want to achieve before you launch your token or your project. Cool. Okay, so we talk a lot about communities. What do we actually mean by that? We have thought about a bunch of different words, and I'd love to hear what else are people building, right? So we think about communities, but a community could be something like a society, a network, a cooperative. How would you define what you're building? And anyone else want to chime in?
Tool.
Go ahead, please, Marco.
Tool.
You're building a tool?
A tool.
Awesome. Yep, exactly. These are the things that are going to empower people to build all of these things. And I like that framing, Marco, because a lot of the time people try to build platforms and protocols, but where they really want to start is a tool. And if you think about that, in a Web2 sense, platform really denotes ownership of the content, ownership of the users. So when we move away from, trying to build these things from day one and really building something people will want to use, and then think about ownership kind of separate from that, that's a key difference in Web 2 and Web 3. An ecosystem, that's great, Guillermo.
That's cool.
Amazing.
Well done. And Reuben, just a clarification, are you looking for like people to share their specifics or just kind of the words?
I think at this stage, the words, yeah. Greg, an experience and identity, love that. And Tianzhao, a collective, yeah. It's amazing. I think the ideas that that can be built in Web3 with all these different structures are just so much more powerful than what you can build in Web 2. Community via connections, it's great. Joe, Paris, Reed, you want to jump in? Want to add anything?
I'm pretty partial to collective. I think it represents this kind of the shared ownership vibe, but also the kind of like the fluidity, the hive kind of nature of being permeable to outside, to people who want to participate. So that one resonates with me quite a bit.
Woot woot.
The other word that comes out sometimes, like that I really like, is squads. I have this hypothesis that the new, like, so what we're talking about is new models of kind of coordinating people and human behavior, which then you start to think about like organizational models and things like that. And industrial kind of corporate organizational models are like about getting huge, right? And being hierarchical, but squads are more like nature, right? They're cellular. And I think that's an interesting thing, is like you can build a squad and then that squad can like amalgamate with other squads, then you've got a collective or something like that.
Quadratic
So good.
All right. I think that's it for the call today, guys.
I'm just gonna say the comment, the chat game for KB4 is on point.
Very strong chat game.
Quadratic funding. I can't even.
Amazing. Okay, so here's another way to think about the community ownership principles and Web3 principles. This real blurring of the boundaries between builders, owners, and users of a product that's simply not possible in Web2. And this is really the heart of the value prop of Web3, that the people who use the product can also contribute as builders, and both of those groups can be owners of the product. The product, the protocol, the network, the community, the collective, insert your noun here. So this allows a bunch more agency for people who typically either just use the product or they were the product in some of these more egregious examples in Web2. None of this is kind of our original thinking. It's just some observations we've seen from everyone building in this space. And that's why we're so excited to be in this track, in this guild with you all, because we're going to kind of push forward a lot of these boundaries over the next few weeks, I'm sure. And some of these other values, definitely transparency, alignment of long-term incentives. We also think it's important that different types of contributions are valued, right? We saw this very quickly with the rise of DeFi launches and yield farming, which was basically saying that capital is valuable because capital was rewarded for providing liquidity or yield farming, but it wasn't actually, any other types of contributions weren't as valued. And obviously that's not a great start to building a Web3 community in terms of these principles. So although, those kind of fair launches were an interesting step, we think it was pretty quickly obvious that there's more beyond that. So on this slide, what else? What other principles, and feel free to unmute or throw them in the chat. What other principles do you want to imbue in your Web3 community? This is great. Stewardship, trust, altruism, centering the margins, responsibility, mentorship, onboarding, values. Yeah, straight up values. Love it. What else, Joe, Reed, Paris? What's jumping out at you?
For me, it's inclusivity. I always talk about it. I do think there's some benefits to having exclusive communities. I think if they're too large, sometimes it's hard to figure out things like contribution and but at the same time, I think inclusivity is something important to always think about.
This is kind of implied by some of what's already here, but a really strong connection between user needs or community needs and the kind of solution side, like what actually gets created and built to help solve those needs. Like you see this in the literal overlap of the bubbles.
Yeah, right on. Paris, just to unpack a little the inclusivity aspect, you tweeted about this, around exclusivity in some of these communities that were forming around being early and being exclusive. Just curious, how that's playing out in your mind.
Yeah, to be honest, I struggle with this a little bit because I do see the benefits of having smaller communities. But I do, for example, my tweet thread, which kind of went crazy, was around this notion of like having to pay, let's say 50, 100 ETH to be a part of a community, which automatically is excluding so many people because maybe they weren't early in crypto. And I feel like we're already early as an entire Web3 community, all of us already, just because we didn't maybe buy ETH ages ago. And so I think there should be other ways to include people in communities outside of just paying loads and loads of money to be in. Now, that said, I do think that there should be, some guardrails, and there are benefits to exclusivity, like I said, like getting things done. For example, when some communities get too big, I guess productivity goes down, and it's hard to see who has ownership over what tasks and things that need to be done.
Got it. Yeah, well said. That's an interesting one as well, because as we talk about, squads, like Joe was mentioning, that's kind of exclusive in some ways. Joe, how do you kind of reconcile that benefit of the squad while recognizing the exclusive?
Yeah, I was just getting Paris's thread because everybody should read it. But the way that I reconcile it is actually I just posted from the International Cooperative Association. They have a set of like shared values and principles that all kind of cooperatives adhere to. And one of them is interoperability across cooperatives. So just because you're in one squad and you specialize in whatever that squad is in, one, you can be member of multiple squads. Two, there can be principles of like where squads are, interoperable somehow. And that allows for kind of cooperation and inclusivity in a different way. I do think like we shouldn't shy away from the tension of specialization and a form of exclusivity, and specialization and focus as a form of exclusivity. And that's in tension with being kind of open and meritocratic so that anybody who wants to participate can. So long story short, I think the idea of cells coming together and becoming tissue is interesting for us to try to think about, but also we should be very aware that there's some touchy gray areas around the tension between focus and exclusivity and openness and kind of availability.
Yeah. I really love that. Thank you for sharing that link, Joe. The first principle, voluntary and open membership, I think is really interesting to think about as well, this open membership concept to those willing to accept responsibilities. And that's where like I would add maybe a bit of kernel flavor and kind of conversation to bring really to the idea, folks, as you guys explore the space. Sid brings up the comment, stewardship versus ownership, and how these things interplay. One of the things that we wonder about in kernel is this idea of complementary opposites, this idea that there is no good without bad, that there's always kind of an equal and opposite force. And the increase in ownership as a part of the conversation in Web3 seems to be a really good thing on one hand, but on another hand, it can be taken to kind of like a different type of extreme if we focus too much on what ownership is. So the question of perhaps balancing that with this sense of stewardship and getting towards structures that are ownerless and feel like they are public property in many senses of the word, and that we are stewards of things as opposed to owners of things. Those are very different mindsets. And how do we navigate that as an industry?
Totally. Yeah, when we think about public goods, of course, we should think about stewardship and not ownership. But it also gives us a chance to unpack what ownership actually means. And a lot of that sense is, that commitment and obligation that comes with stewardship. And then some of the different benefits of ownership, in the sense that it's not necessarily about control or, excluding others, but that ownership, some of the benefits of, realizing the value for your contribution and having your different diverse input valued. Those are some of the aspects of ownership that can be unpacked in Web3 in a way that was more binary, either you own or you don't in Web2. So that's some other concepts that we can explore as well. Okay, I think, this was getting into some of the more strategic stuff around, building a Web3 community. Vivek, did we want to break out, or did we want to power through? How is everyone feeling?
I think it's good to power through. Let's keep it rolling here.
Cool. So these are some of the things that we will explore in the Web3 Communities Guild, as you all go on your journey from where you are to wherever it is you're going. And as we explore some of these aspects of building a Web3 community, we'll talk about things like structuring, from different types of organizations that, even though we're building in Web3, we live in a world where there are existing structures. And so the combination of those structures is sometimes inevitable and sometimes important for building what you need to build. Fundraising, of course, a big question. How do you attract that capital, especially in this context of community ownership and stewardship? How do you attract that capital that's necessary to build the thing without, giving away the ownership or sliding back into those traditional models that we're trying to move beyond? Legal and regulatory, of course, a big concern. That's my background personally, so I'll be leading a session later on in this guild specifically on some of that stuff. Distribution, of course, we have been talking about already, and we'll continue to. Governance, again, an interesting word in the context of Web3 communities. Definitely the buzzword for DeFi last year, but I think, again, this concept of control and control versus influence versus contribution, all these things kind of blur. So we can talk about what even is governance in that context, especially as Vivek mentioned and Sid with the idea of stewardship and decision making on a distributed basis. Building with community, of course, a critical component. How do you value those different types of contributions? Building the community and building with the community. What else? What else do people want us to cover in this guild, or what do people want to raise?
Could we say that here on the mic, that I think structuring is super important, especially when it comes to DAOs, because it seems different legal experts, and especially in us building our own DAO and figuring out how to structure this, also thinking about how to effectively navigate where you see projects like Compound and others in the camp of saying that they have a DAO if there's this sort of decentralized governance. Well, it falls out of the purview of securities as relating to, it's no longer a centralized issuer. This is the people managing it are the owners of the people participating in the DAO, not, hey, I'm putting my money into this thing and I'm letting a third party handle it. Well, and then there's discussion about when it comes to structuring and including fundraising and managing this money, is that, well, a lot of people that are in DAOs don't really participate. So you have a DAO and you have this structure, and legally it is, you can say it's decentralized, but then if you're only having 99 out of like 10,000 people that are actually contributing, legally that could be seen as, well, it's being built on the efforts of others. So there's this kind of like catch-22 between our aspirations between DAOs as one example, and then the reality of what happens in terms of people's real participation in these DAOs. And I think that's a big issue for everyone in terms of just clarity, and even for us as we get into the DAO space and we want to incentivize people to participate and bring in, maybe not even allow more than 100 people. I've gotten advice not even to allow more than 100 people into the DAO and only cap it at 99. Otherwise, you get considered like a mutual. There's a corporate structure of that. But anyway, this is it's a whole mess.
Yeah, that is for sure. There's a lot of things that have merged together there around the structuring, the fundraising, and the legal and regulatory. So we will definitely dive into that. And then again, the idea is around decision making as a collective as well. So a lot of stuff. We will talk a lot about DAOs. I think that I think a lot of people have maybe a little too specific an idea of what a DAO is or what it can be. And so we think a lot of what people are talking about in the context of DAOs really are Web3 communities, just expressed in different ways. So we'll talk about that as well. Really loved some of the comments in the chat around onboarding and education. I think that's a critical piece for people coming into Web3 for the first time. So we'll definitely make time in one of these guild sessions to talk about onboarding and education. How do we communicate the messages to people who are not yet in Web3, who are not yet on this journey with us? So we'll definitely spend a bit of time on that and collaborate with you all who have been thinking about this in a lot more detail. What else? Thank you for these comments. These are fantastic. These really help us focus on what you'd like to cover. So we'll circle back and come up with a couple of sessions based around some of these comments. So this is excellent. Thanks very much.
I saved the chat too, Reuben, or I'll save it again at the end, but yeah, we'll have it for later.
Legend. Thank you, Vivek. All right. Okay, so this was the kind of open discussion part of this session. We've covered a lot of ground, or at least we've promised we'll cover a lot of ground. So thank you for being with us on this. But yeah, now's the time to speak up or put in the chat. If you wanted to take a couple of minutes, tell us what you're working on and what challenges that you anticipate. Anyone want to be a brave volunteer?
There's so many awesome projects here. Please don't be shy. Keep it quick so we can maybe get through a bunch and you can hear what other people are working on too.
I don't mind going first. And I think it relates to fair launches. I'm working on the meme project, Don't Buy Meme. We initially did an airdrop to community. So we gave all of our tokens basically away for free. And one of the issues that we've had with that is that, you know, one, a lot of people sold, but people from the community, they don't like to contribute and they like to complain about token price. And what happened was most of our team, they don't even own any meme tokens. So a lot of the team incentives aren't really aligned with the project. So we've had, or I'm trying to come up with solutions around this with other projects, other ways of funding, but that's been one of the biggest issues for our project has been, you know, we did an awesome fair launch, we gave tokens away to community, but it probably didn't end up in the right hands. So that's one thing a problem that I'm looking to solve for our project.
I'll go next.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, I think that's a really great example of, you know, you all did a very thoughtful launch, and yet there are still challenges after that, like you say, with the distribution. But yeah, there's definitely, I think, things we'd love to explore around, you know, whether it's using inflation or other distribution mechanisms to kind of to get things back where you need them to be. But yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, Snacks.
Yeah, so at Pizza DAO, we have 10,000 rare pizza NFTs, and we allocated 1,250 for the team. So it's very easy to say whether or not someone has earned one pizza, but to retroactively decide how many pizzas a given team member has earned according to their contribution is harder. So we're working on governance strategies to do that. And so far, the strategy is get everyone who deserves one a pizza, and then go to everyone who has one pizza and vote on the contribution status of people who have earned one and who deserves more. And that does not get into actually distributing a pizza token, which is a bridge we're afraid of and you know are going to take our time with.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great example. I really like that. It's a problem that everyone's going to face is how do you value everyone's contributions? And yeah, this is an exciting opportunity to, you know, define those new structures and try new ways to value that. Very cool. Thanks, Nax. Who's up? Amanath?
Hi. We're building a social discovery platform. I think I'll probably extend the point that was being discussed with respect to fair launch as well. I felt destroyed when I did not get a mechaverse. I think one of the biggest problem there was people were using bot farms to probably like be able to get access to the raffle. This goes in line with what we are trying to build. We are building a social discovery platform where identity is a very important piece of the puzzle, where we are trying to ensure your identity is backed by the kind of activity that is happening on your wallet and the chain activity. So that way in future, if I want to be part of any other fair launch, I know for a fact that this particular individual is not a bot. One of the challenges that we are facing is go-to community. At this point, we would want to have the apes and punks be a part of our platform. That is something we are figuring it out.
Great, thank you, Amanath. Totally agree. You know, the idea of first come, first mint, or even the raffle is like the very early stages of fair distribution for NFT drops. And there's so many more tools that we need to build to make them more fair and equitable and inclusive. That's a great example. Go-to community, love it. Yes.
Yeah, maybe Daryl, if you want to go quickly, no stress if not, but would love for people to know what you're up to.
Thanks for the invitation, you all. Here in Oakland, we're building a local cryptocurrency to ensure that all residents get to participate in the prosperity of our city, that we can all own and grow what we live and build here, and that we might be able to create a truly interconnected and interwoven community. One of the big challenges I'm facing in the process of bringing together folks who have been harmed by technology, folks who have been leading the charge on technology, and those in between, is how to reconcile the messy people issues of how technology and how our institutions of finance and governance traditionally have created terrible wedges between folks. And so, in addition to all of the technical challenges, how might we work at that psychological, emotive, and even spiritual plane to enable a true kind of integration moving forward into this platform? So that's a big thing on my plate, and I'm afraid that we're going to repeat the same inner world of Web 2 and bring that into Web 3. And from that place of inner divisiveness, we'll just kind of make all kinds of decisions that look the same.
Yeah, 1000% agree, Daryl. That's exactly what we need to actively work to prevent happening. Otherwise, we're just going to slide back into the same power structures, just with different people in the center.
I could go on and on about this, partially because I'm an unabashed Oakland lover. But I think one of the things that I realized over the last year is this has gone from being something that we all believe in to an imperative to make sure we're building bridges to communities outside of the early adopter community. And there's all kinds of different ways to do that, but we need to be actively working on that. So super excited you're focusing on this, DJ. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think following up on that.
A couple more hands raised. Go ahead, please.
All right. No, just following up on Daryl's comment. Some of us are working on a project aiming for bringing more women and onboarding them onto the Web3 space, trying to change that paradigm so that we don't fall into the same Web2 patterns. And so, of course, in a more tangible way, this looks as launching an NFT project, getting some funding, creating some content, but looking on the roadmap, a big challenge is how do we then use those funds to support other women-led, women-founded projects without having every member within the DAO have to be an accredited investor. And so it's more of the legalities of the issue, but definitely something that we've been thinking through.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Juliet. Who's up next? Tian? Sorry.
That was me. I was just gonna say we're hearing a lot of more about kind of women in crypto groups forming up, and so we should connect you, Julia.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Yeah. So my idea is something I just shared in the chat. Well, I mean, not just shared, but it was shared later up. And it's a new idea that I want to build. But the challenge I see with it is that it's not going to be like a brand new community that I'm trying to build. In fact, I want to build a DAO, but for an existing community that is not onboarded to the Web3 world. But yeah, so that's but more specifically, so what I'm trying to build is something called I've currently called it the Ouroboros project or whatever, but it's a working title, and it's all about circular economics, more specifically all about plastic recycling, and even more specifically it's all about leveraging an existing organization called the One Army Earth Foundation. I think I'm not exactly sure what their full name is, but they're a nonprofit, and they created this project called Precious Plastic, which is this contraption that this recycling processing contraption that allows you to break down plastic products into tiny pellets. Yeah, essentially, I would want to be able to engage their existing global community, but like onboard them to the Web3 with a DAO and to help them scale and better incentivize their community. But yeah, the challenge is just like how to engage an existing community that isn't onboarded to the Web3.
Very cool. Thanks, Tianzia. That's awesome.
And I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but just very quickly, my last name is pronounced Zhao with a J.
Oh, thank you, Jian Zhao. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, who's up next? Andros?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I thought I needed to jump on a call, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm basically working on a social platform / DAO that gamifies building, learning, and creating projects with a social token. So it's a web mobile app that lets users submit project proposals, and these can be like, crypto native projects like starting a DAO, NFT projects, DeFi protocol, or it could be just creators trying to create art or music, etc. And then once the community approves these projects, users will be able to earn like our native social token when they complete goals and tasks for this. And so this is kind of like our initial airdrop, our fair launch. You have to earn to get the tokens distributed, and it's sort of like a play to earn model. And then we want to build utility in the token by creating like tools for coordination, specifically for organizations like DAOs. So these are like project management tools, like sort of task sizing, payment, coordination, contributor analytics, things like that. And then also integrating with other DAOs so they can pay in their native token. And then if those DAOs don't have their token incentives, they can use our native token to sort of pay contributors to design code, whatever. And then sort of later on, we want to help projects crowdfund as well. So it's basically like a productivity metaverse that wants to power other metaverses whilst also having our own sort of social feeds and in-game like sort of gamifications. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. And I guess some of the things that we're trying to think through is like who is the initial community, like how we can help DAOs coordinate better. Like obviously helping like a FWB is very different to helping something that people are starting out when they're just like 5 or 10 people. So yeah, those are some questions that we're thinking through.
That's great. Thank you, Andres. I really like that idea of how do you kind of incentivize those participants across different DAOs with different skill sets. Okay, let's hear from Sister Tipebwa, Michelle, and Tim and Christian, and then we probably have to wrap up. Let's go.
Greetings of love and light and peace and darkness, crypto family. I'm here beaming in from Lamu Island, Kenya. So we have a organic world DAO, that means a community-based organization, and we're manifesting a cryptocurrency to be able to trade within our DAO, and maybe even tokens for membership. The main challenges are how to kind of bridge the gap from people who are members mostly don't even have smartphones. So you're taking, it's a people that, it's really difficult to imagine how to even explain cryptocurrency. So I kind of anticipate that as probably the biggest challenge is to take, to bridge the two worlds. My hopes and prayers for this track is that somehow within all of this, the right people in the right way, in the right time will come together to manifest this in the right way. And questions for the group is, anyone up for helping? Give thanks and praise.
Thank you so much. Michelle?
Thanks, Reuben. Hi guys, I'm Michelle. I am working on a project called Mutual. It's very much in early stage, but the IDEO is one of the reasons why I started to look into crypto was because of this essay I read on community democracy and mutual aid. So a lot of that has been kind of a guiding force, and trying to think around like mutual aid in, I guess, like a Web2 world is very much dependent on, you know, existing third-party platforms today. Like a lot of the mutual aid orgs that I support are, you know, transactions take place across platforms like Patreon and Venmo and whatnot. So I want to sort of explore what like a Web3 application or Web3 community. I'm not really sure. I think what I'm super excited is to learn a little bit more about the technicalities of social tokens, airdrops, and DAOs, and like, is that actually something that I want to integrate into this project? Yeah, just sort of thinking along the lines of, you know, building something that aligns with the gift economy versus the market economy. Are we able to maybe introduce a Web3 application that is able to enable users to track funds and be able to have a better understanding, increased transparency over where your mutual, where your donations or your aid, whether that be money or time or emotional labor, is, I guess, like spent. Yeah, very, very early stages. Still need to flesh out a lot of details, which is why I'm here. So I'm super excited to learn from everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, Michelle. All right, how about Tim and then Christian?
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of thoughts around this, this big transition to Web3 that we're all in. I think Daryl touched on it a little bit with the impact of tech on communities. I'm also in Oakland, collaborating with him on the Oakland token, but I think about this more holistically around issues of trust and safety, around polarization, around anti-harassment, fixing the effects of Web2 on communities, fixing democracy. These are like big, thorny problems that if we don't engage really intentionally, that we could like end up accidentally reinforcing. So I'm just putting it out there, and I'm curious if anyone's either working on things like this or has come across resources or articles or movements. Definitely want to make sure that anything that I'm part of building helps solve for those things instead of exacerbating them.
Cool. Well, yeah, amazing projects from everyone, and feel a little silly almost talking about this project that I've been helping out with. It's not what I'm working on full time, but I think it's cool. But some of these projects are just going to be so impactful on a more human level. I think they're just fantastic. But I've been working on this side project as I guess you could say an early contributor, where it's called Footy DAO. It's very new, but it's gotten some traction of late. And essentially what we're trying to do is purchase a football or a soccer team, depending on where you're from, in Europe. And so we're constructing a DAO similar to how Rari has constructed their DAO, in terms of having these teams that are very focused on completing certain objectives. One is an acquisitions team, one is a tokenomics team, one is an incentives team, a crypto community team. And so we've started building that out recently, and I think it's a cool way where the kind of the real world ownership that's only in the past been relegated to people with individuals with tons of money, and so trying to kind of bring that to the community and to have fans and ultimately people who are dedicated to be making decisions and have influence there. Yeah, if you have any questions about it, message me and I can send you a link to the Discord. We're open to anyone. But yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, great example of DAOs reaching out into the real world and affecting existing organizations. Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We're coming up on time. This has been a wonderful first session, getting to see you all and hear not just the amazing things that you're working on, but the principles that you're bringing to them. And yeah, we learn more each time we do a kernel block than I think that we provide. We're just here as facilitators of this guild. So thank you again. We'll see you next week. Ping us in Slack and look for us in office hours as well. Thanks, Vivek. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, IDEO. You guys are awesome. Reuben, Joe, Paris, super excited.
Cheers.
Reed, you too. Peace, 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 peace.